What's up, everybody, and welcome to a Tuesday edition of Morning Cuppa Hockey presented by Bet365. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365, and we are also presented by Perasso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care made in Italy since 1948. Perasso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations, so get 15% off at Perasso-USA.com with our promo code Hockey15 in all caps. Hockey15. The Columbus Blue Jackets have fired Dean Evason. They have hired Rick Bowness. The Toronto Maple Leafs are fixed. The New York Rangers are broken. Dougie Hamilton is back. So many different storylines from last night. So many different directions to go in. We got Zack Phillips, who is now an official recurring guest joining the show. We got new friend Chris Lopresti from WFAN joining the show. That'll be his first time on the show. He is a big Ranger fan who covers all New York sports for WFAN. So excited to get him on. Shout out to his cousin Dylan Lopresti, who is basically in our chat every day. There is a lot to get into, Colby. So many different places we can go. Yeah, say something.
I just want to say one or two things. I think Dougie Hamilton probably owes us because he probably got back in the lineup because of us, because of all the attention that we gave the whole thing on the show yesterday. We called out the whole organization. We called out Fitzy. We called out lying to the media. We were all over the Devils yesterday. And then Dougie Hamilton goes back into the game, 2 primary assists. Listen, I'd say we had a hand in that. So Dougie, if you're listening this morning, pal, I know we don't know each other well. We had a little crossover in Boston, but you're welcome. That's what we're here for. We're here to have the players' backs. Except
Colby,
for
I also
the New York Rangers.
I don't know if you're aware. I have a new nickname, it seems like, amongst Ranger fans. I don't know if you've seen this. Have you seen it?
What, Mr. Brightside?
Yeah. I've been getting it on Twitter. Now I'm seeing it in the chat from Rangers Wire. Rangers Wire left me should I read the tweet that I got this morning that I woke up to from Rangers Wire?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's pull this up. I got a tweet this morning that read, sorry, just give me 1 second. Jonny, the entire internet loves you, dude. We always have your back in every situation. That said, please stop with the Mr. Brightside stuff. This is literally rubbing salt in a wound. Mika has been fantastic this year, but he's also the exact DNA that runs through this team. It stems from players like him. Soft crybaby. I'm going to well up in an interview, pansies. This year's mantra should be no balls, not no BS. And I just quoted it and said no. But yeah, I mean, Ranger fans right now, it's rough. But the one thing I was pointing out last night is that Mika Zibanejad has been the only positive, or one of the only positives this season after a year of criticism last year, which again is a low bar. But there's so many different places we could start, man. Do you want to start? Rangers are bringing Zach and go to the Leafs and
Let's
the
talk
Avs
about
last
the
night.
Leafs, because you've got somebody coming on who works in New York sports radio. And so we'll save the New York Rangers talk till Chris comes on the show at what, 9:30, something like that. And
9:30.
And let's just talk about the Leafs, and let's just make sure we give everybody a little bit of background here, because Jonny pronounced the Leafs dead. Was this a month and a half ago, would you say, at this point? I mean, it's probably been
November 3rd. It was November 3rd.
Yeah.
That
I mean, you pronounced this team dead in the water, which there was probably some reasonable information behind that. You bet Vic a large sum of money. That
wasn't like a real official bet, but
so now it's
I'll do half of that. I'll do half of that.
But you're in trouble with this bet, because Auston Matthews seemingly, maybe he just could take a deep breath when he found out he was still on the Olympic team and that they weren't pulling his prior selection off the board. And the guy looks ready to play all of a sudden. And you've got the big time stars of the Toronto Maple Leafs making big time plays. And on a night where Jake McCabe had let's call it an uncharacteristically bad night, because he's rarely having games like that. Even on off nights for him, they're usually good efforts. The Toronto Maple Leafs come up with a huge overtime win that'll give your team belief that you can beat anyone. So why don't you read Zach into the show, Jonny, and we'll continue this conversation about our friends from north of the border.
So before we get to Zack Phillips, just a quick word from our sponsor, Uber Eats. Uber Eats is enabling fans to maximize their fandom all season long with exclusive game day deals on the app. From game day eats to paper plates and napkins, if you're hosting, to all the ingredients you need to make your favorite game day dip before, during, and after the game, Uber Eats is assisting every fan's hockey experience all season long. And as you know, with Uber Eats, we always create the stats. And today's stat of the day: since the firing of Mark Savard, since December 23rd, Auston Matthews has 8 goals and 6 assists for 14 points in 9 games. And the Toronto Maple Leafs are 8-0-2 in that span. They have the most points in the NHL. They are skating to a 31.8% rate on the power play and a 91.7 success rate on the penalty kill. This team has completely turned it around. I didn't think for a fucking second they would win that game last night in overtime after the incredible play by Cale Makar. It was a great poke check by Woll. And Natchez, I think, had a great breakaway chance too in OT. And Nylander's the hero, Zach. So where do you want to start here? It's good to see your face again, and looked like you had a great time in Michigan.
Yeah, I did. I mean, Yost is sick, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in this, but this is about the Leafs. It's always about the Leafs. We got to talk about the Leafs. The reports of our demise were greatly exaggerated, and specifically by one Jonny Lazarus, who was willing to bet his life savings on the Maple Leafs to miss the playoffs.
More than that.
Yeah.
I don't even have half of it.
I mean, just
he's going to be asking
put,
me
last
for
night's
a loan
game
for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Last night's game instills confidence in the fan base. Like, I haven't seen people this fired up about this group in a long, long time, because that's not just getting by and beating the Avs. Like, they beat them last year. They beat some good teams throughout the way, where it was just like, hey, maybe you kind of got lucky, or you played some up and down fast-paced hockey where there was a lot of sloppiness on either end. Like, sure, there's some stuff that's got to be tightened up about that game last night, but all the way through, from goaltending to defense, even when you had guys not stepping up or not playing the way you'd expect them to, as Colby mentioned, Jake McCabe, a little bit of an uncharacteristic night. It's just next man up. It's the next guy who fills into that role and says, okay, it's fine. I got it. I can help you out. I can bail you out of this situation, whether it was Joseph Woll or his D partner or forwards helping out. It was an unreal win from the Leafs last night, and even like Laz, you're saying you didn't think they were going to win getting to OT. I didn't either, to be honest with you. And I'm not one for moral victories. I fucking hate the moral victory game. I hate the participation trophy game. But even looking at that body of work through 60 going into OT, I was expecting a loss. And I texted Alberga and Rosehill and Vic and said, like, even if they lose this thing, I'm happy with this game. The fact that they battled through this on the road in Colorado and got a point out of this playing the way they did, I was happy. And then they just stole the extra point from the Avs off of a William Nylander steal from McKinnon. It was like, this is the best night of my life. This is the best night ever. We've turned this thing around, and Laz is going to have to eat this tomorrow morning.
I think that you can look at the scratching of Domi, because he's been a bit of a different player since he got scratched. He just looks a lot hungrier. You can look at Brandon Carlo's been playing really well since he got back. Maybe his best little mini stretch of games since he became a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? And you can look at last night and say they got a little bit of depth scoring. You know what I mean? McMahon scores a goal. Easton Cowan
Beautiful
scores
goal.
a goal. But having said all of that, the reality of the situation, Zach, is when the stars go, this team goes. And all of those other things are important. Joseph Woll making saves, like finally getting some consistent goaltending this season, which they desperately needed. At the end of the day, when the game's on the line in the third period, Matthews from Nylander, Nylander from Matthews, okay? You see, defensive plays from Auston Matthews. He's creating his own space out there rather than being a spectator on some of these plays. And I will say this, it might not get them through a 7-game series in the playoffs, because you do need more than your stars in the playoffs. But in the regular season, when you've got two guys that are at the caliber of talent that those two are, and they've had the success that they've had in the National Hockey League, for sustained periods that they both have. Remember, it's not long ago we were sitting here saying the guy who's going to break Ovechkin's record is Auston Matthews. We were talking about that not that long ago. The big dogs played like big dogs in a night where they played against Nathan McKinnon, who's been on an absolute tear this entire season. Natchez is having career, type of year. You go down.
They were also on a 17 game home winning streak, Colby.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, the stars have been the stars, and why though? And that's what I don't understand. Are we really honestly sitting here saying Matthews and Nylander were stinking up the joint because of Mark Savard? I don't know. Like, is that what we're going with here? Like, what is different about them?
We made fun of that firing.
I know, I did too. I did a reaction video after, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? This is the only move that was made. I came on here and talked with you guys about it the last time, and was like, Craig Berube's got to go. And for me, that wasn't a shot at Berube. That wasn't a dislike of him or anything. It was just like, some shit's got to change in there. And I don't know, Colby, Laz, you guys would know better than I would, but just from what I'm seeing, stylistically, they've changed here a little bit as well. They're playing with possession more. They're playing a faster pace game. They get up the ice much better. And then when they get into the offensive zone, the cycle game that they've put on seems to be a lot more inclusive of the defense and actually going east-west in the offensive zone. What I mean by that is they'll work a cycle in the right corner, and then maybe it kind of runs out or they get themselves into trouble. Well, rather than just forcing some type of play, they'll rip it around the boards to the other side, activate the weak side defenseman down the wall, and then support across, and then start the cycle on that side. And it's just like, we got in trouble rather than throwing this thing away, getting rid of it like they were doing before, where they just kept turning pucks over and couldn't play with it. They're playing with the puck on their stick way more often, which, I mean, I'm sure every star player in the NHL would say, yeah, the game's a lot easier when the puck's on my stick. Now Nylander, now Matthews, they're getting the opportunity to play with possession, to get up the ice with possession, which is probably helping them. I think it's a little too easy to say that, they just hated Mark Savard's guts, and now that he's gone, it's like the weight of the world's off their shoulders. I think that firing might have been, this is pure speculation, just a shot across the bow at everybody involved. Berube, who doesn't want to budge on his systems, the Maple Leafs, who were sitting there in near last place in the NHL at that point. I think they were second last in the Eastern Conference when it happens, and just saying, shit's got to change or more of you are going. Because Berube had blocked firings on Savard before. He didn't want him out of there. They tried to change things up, and they basically said, okay, enough's enough. He's going to go. And it seems like it was a wake-up call to Berube, the rest of the coaching staff, and the guys in the room for Berube and co to kind of look around and be like, we got to change this. Like, this needs to change now. And then we can start to figure things out. And it's just been a light bulb that went off in that room where everybody looks different. Everybody plays differently. And I'll say this. I see Rome in the chat. Leafs are so soft. If you think that, you're not fucking watching hockey games. I'm sorry. Like, this team does not play soft either. I'm not going to try to pretend that they're the Broad Street Bullies and they're beating the wheels off of everybody. But another piece of the puzzle here that's changed over the last stretch, Colby, is they stick up for each other. Yeah. This is a team that plays like a team. But like they go in there and they respond for their goaltender. They respond for teammates. They go in and get involved in scrums. And I know that's like, wow, that's a stupid thing to say. Oh, wow, they get in scrums. But like when you watch the team for 9 years, they just like they're not involved in anything physical. And now they are
like a first touch team, Jonny. Like I see winning the first puck, and I see them rather than this like wait and see approach. When they're trying to, forecheck or they're looking to close a guy off who's entering the offensive zone, like they just look much more like a first touch team in a pretty short period of time. Honestly, they've sort of taken on the personality of Scott Laughton a little bit. And yes. I know he just had his reunion back in Philly where he had a good, a good little run of his career and really endeared himself to the fans in Philadelphia. I mean, he was a beloved Flyer, Scott Laughton, like beloved as it could be. I'm pretty sure him and Sean Couturier are the longest tenured athletes in Philadelphia at the time when they traded him. Nobody had been here longer than those two, I think, when that happened, when he was traded. So it is, Johnny, just a much different looking group right now. And look, Colorado doesn't play soft. If you want to beat Colorado, you got to be willing to go play physical. I mean, their forwards are not finesse guys. They got a lot of powerful, straight line, in your face types of guys on that Avs team, Laz. So I thought that was a marquee win that the Leafs could build off of.
First of all, so weird to hear you call me Laz. Second of all, one thing I will add, like, I didn't think we were don't give me that face. I think when the Leafs were bad, we weren't saying they were soft at any point of that stretch where we were ripping them. It was all details. I saw a comment in the chat about Scott Laughton going on Chicklets and talking about their neutral zone. I didn't hear that interview with Scotty Laughton. I know the guys just did like a 3-hour final live show. I haven't had a chance to listen to the full thing yet, but I obviously will get there at some point. But earlier in the season, it felt like the forwards were dive bombing and the opponents were skating right by them, getting odd man rushes, and the D had way too big of gaps. Like, that's the team that I was talking about in November that just looked like they had no details in their game, and everyone else was just kind of dancing around them. That's not playing soft. That's just playing stupid. I think that was the issue with this team earlier. But now, like last night, you watch them in the neutral zone, even the play that Willie made, right? He's not going at McKinnon. He's kind of allowing McKinnon to come at him. And when he has a second, he makes the step and makes that play and pickpockets McKinnon, then gets going north.
Johnny, that's the perfect
That's 3-on-3, yes.
Yeah, you're when you go to that play, you use the term like dive bombing. Yeah, the easy thing to do there would have just been take a straight line and go for broke and just try to go poke. Go big or go home.
Which Nylander had done earlier in the season.
You're going poking for a breakaway or they're getting a breakaway. But instead, he waits. He absorbs that rush a little bit. It's a harder, more patient play to make, but it's a much safer, more honest play to make. And so that's a good pickup, I would say. That play right there in particular.
But they're doing that at 5-on-5 too.
In that sort of go big or go home versus like, let me be a little more team oriented on this play. Cause like, let's say he doesn't pick that puck. He still is in his way at that point, and he still has an opportunity to get himself back into the, into a spot to defend that rush.
And think about how many clips we saw Nylander poking and going by earlier in the season, Colby, right? Like Nylander is the prime example of a guy who'd go for the dive bomb. Yeah,
exactly.
It's just a different focus on details.
Well, and I think another thing too in this is everybody else on the team can pay attention to details. They can play physical. They can support defensively and do the right things and play hockey the right way as much as they want. Throughout the course of an 82-game season, if you look around and William Nylander and Auston Matthews and the other guy who's no longer here are sitting around doing little poke checks and flybys, and they don't want to finish a check and doing that kind of stuff, it's going to kind of rub guys the wrong way, no matter what you think. Like, yes, that guy can score 100 points, but if I have to go in the room with that guy every day, and the coaching staff has to tell us, finish your checks, don't be lazy, don't pigeon out on blocked shots, don't get out of the way, like committing to those little things, take a hit to make a play. And I watch that guy and I'm like, he doesn't do it, and his minutes don't get cut, and it's not helping us win games because he's not buying in. It's going to probably kind of just wear on guys a little bit. Not saying they turn on each other or anything like that, but at some point, maybe it starts to creep in like, okay, what the hell are we doing here? Last night in that game, William Nylander, who is the one that I would kind of look to and want it more out of even Auston Matthews when it comes to committing in the defensive zone, because I think Matthews is a good defensive zone player. When I looked at William Nylander last night, supporting his center down low, supporting the D in the corner on breakouts, getting back and breaking up plays on back checks, collapsing into the slot if there was breakdowns and filling in for guys. Like, he was committed to defensive zone details. Did he fly the zone a bunch? Yeah, but I think that's just part of William Nylander's game, and you're going to have to live with that. But he's bringing other elements to it. And if you see and you look up and William Nylander, who scores the OT winner and walks away with the multi-point game here yet again, is a guy who's committing to the defensive zone and doing the little things and paying attention to the details, I think it just makes it easier for everyone else to buy in. And I'm going to keep saying this, and I know it's going to be cliche and probably maybe I'm looking into it a little bit too much here.
Yeah.
That's fair, but I think the team aspect of this stuff where every guy can look around the room and look at each other and realize that guy has my back. That guy is going to do the little things to win. If they can honestly say that about each other, it's going to help them keep playing this way and keep having success. It may not be to this degree. This might slow down at some point, but just you're going to have a better opportunity to succeed if you do that. And I don't think they could have genuinely looked around the room before and said that about every guy in there, that they were willing to do that. So I think that we're just seeing a very different looking group right now. Honestly, it's just a lot of fun to watch this team play hockey.
I'm gonna step up for you right now too and defend the Leafs a little bit here. There's a comment actually in our chat that kind of pisses me off and rubs me the wrong way here. Fletcher Joel said 0 mentions that the Leafs beat a third-string AHL goalie. Who the fuck cares? Are you going to take away every win that's against a backup goalie for every team or third-string goalie in the NHL this year? Guys have been getting hurt on every team. There's injuries everywhere, and the Avalanche are still winning games when they have Minor in goal. So I'm not taking any credit away for the Leafs last night. I watched the second half of that game. Granted, I missed the first period because I was getting out of MSG, but the Leafs played toe-to-toe with the Colorado Avalanche last night. They didn't look slower. While, Colorado obviously has that second gear and no one skates to the pace of Colorado. That play Natchez and Makar have, that's fucking insane, right? That was the sickest goal, one of the sickest goals I've seen all year. But yeah. Colorado does that to everybody. Either way, though, I don't care what goalie the Leafs played against last night. They played a really good hockey game against the best hockey team in the NHL this year. And to say, 0 mention that the Leafs beat a third-string AHL goal, that's just to me, that's a pointless comment. So, that's what we do in this show. If you want things mentioned, sometimes it's going to backfire. Anything else from you, Colby?
Let me make one other comment here. So you're talking about sort of that, looking at what other guys are doing. So I can just tell you this. I've sat on these benches before, Zach, and I at the pro level, other than in my very early days where I was sort of, I would say being handed things early in my pro career rather than merit, just because I just never was really a good pro. Even though, again, when you're a high draft choice, people just literally hand you shit early in your career. Here, you're on the power play. But I can tell you this: as it got a little bit later in my career, in my role, and I went from a prospect to a suspect to a depth guy, and then they don't have a problem having you sit in the press box, being the guy. If they have a call up that they have no intention of playing, then you become that guy. So I've kind of been in that situation where you're watching guys who play 30 minutes a night or whatever, or 25. When those guys are not being held to any level of accountability, which is what you're talking about with Nylander and the way that he will play at times, when he'll make a play like that and you're one of the fourth line guys who never touches the ice but does try to always play the right way, is you just look at your teammate. You don't have to say anything, right? They turn a puck over, they fly by, they blow the zone early, it costs you a goal late in the third period. All you're doing, you're not even saying anything on the bench, right? You might throw a little elbow at the guy you're sitting next to because you've been sitting on the bench for half a period. You probably got 3 shifts in the third period, right? And so when that shit is happening, those are forces that you're not going to win a championship with that type of thing happening on your bench. And it happens on most benches, by the way, when you have guys like that. So that is something that is incredibly underrated when you're talking about a culture and a team that goes out. And you're not going to win every game, but doesn't have the crazy nights where you're laying those eggs, where the fan base wants to burn jerseys and throw shit on the ice at you. There are going to be losses where I think smart hockey fans, and I think we probably have a number of them in our chat, can walk out of a building and say, yeah, they were better than us tonight. Or, oh, you look at the Carolina-Detroit game last night, and like, as much as Carolina doesn't win that game, I think as a Carolina fan, you can walk out of that building being like, okay, that was a pretty good hockey game. They climbed back into it after being down in the third period.
And they lose on a bullshit play.
Yeah, they probably deserve better in overtime. Like, I think that the cross-check on Shane Gostisbehere, like, I think that – but I think you can live with that as a Carolina Hurricane fan, losing that game because what you know what you just watched, right? So now the next step for the Leafs is, can you do this for a sustained period of time where guys are bought in? Because bought in Willie is really obvious, okay?
Yeah.
It's less obvious with Matthews, because even though Matthews isn't scoring, the guy has become a pretty good defensive player. Like, he has, right? Credit where credit is due. That's not why he's paid, but at least let's call that out. When Willie is not bought in, it's bad. He's Willie who's skating around the ice with a fucking see-through tank top when he's not bought in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's so obvious. And so I think, like, that's where the rubber meets the road, in my opinion, Zach. And I think what you're saying here, and especially putting myself on a bench and thinking about the dynamics at play, like that, you're like, yep, there we go again. 13 million, we make 900. You know what I mean? Like that's reality.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously was never on a pro bench, but from my experience playing high-level minor hockey and then junior lacrosse and stuff like
GTHL, man.
GTHL, yeah, GTHL.
That's intense shit you guys got going on.
You look at
there.
the kids and it's like, here's the guy who's here because of dad's money or because he's friends with the coaching staff or whatever, and then he does the little loop-de-loop or throws a backhand no-look across the ice through the neutral zone in the playoffs, and yet he's still out there for the next shift. And you're like, well, what the fuck just happened? Like, I'm out here working my dick off. I'm blocking shots. I'm hustling down guys. And like, this guy's just continuing to get out there and he's hurting us. Like, it can kind of piss you off a little bit. Maybe just make you, and again, I'm not trying to say they look around and say, I'm not going to do my job, but it's just one of those things where it's like, do I really want to play for you? Like, I'll play for myself and my own personal pride, but do I want to play for you? Maybe that starts to get lost a little bit. I want to ask you guys a question because it was something that I've been theorizing a bit myself on the After Dark show, and some people adamantly disagreed, but you guys played a much higher level than I did, and I think a little bit more old school in the approach to the game than some people now, maybe my age. So my question to you, which I'll try to word this properly here for you guys, is do you not think it's beneficial for some of these guys to learn lessons where they do have minutes cut, they do get put down further into the lineup when they are younger guys coming into the league, and learn how to play not just as gifted, talented players? And the examples I'll use will be this. So Nick Robertson, when he first came to the Leafs, came in, high-flying, scoring, skilled player. A lot of times he would sit in the press box, he would get sent to the Marlies, he would play on third and fourth lines. He seems to have developed into a guy who's added a B game. He's not just a guy who can score and that kind of stuff. And he's added a physicality, a forechecking element. He's been much better in the defensive zone. Similar concept in a much tighter time span for Matias Maccelli, who sat out for a fucking month. Comes back. He's playing way better offensively, but it's also the little things in his game that are better here. And then the other guy that I look at is Easton Cowan. He's in his first year, and I keep having Leafs fans say to me, like, you can't play this guy on the third line. You can't play this guy on the fourth line. He's got to play in the top six or he's got to go to the Marlies. I adamantly disagree. I think that it's case by case, obviously, for players and how they're going to respond. But, I mean, I look at a guy like that, and I see him learning lessons every single night. I see him recognizing I've got to add these other things, and Berube sits him down and says, you can't make that play at the blue line when you're up 3-2 in a third period against the Avalanche. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to lose my confidence, but I think it just goes back a little bit more to, when I started watching hockey, where these young guys would come in and kind of have their pee-pee whacked a little bit and be like, you can't do that, and they learn the lessons, rather than now it's like, oh, okay, buddy, get back out there, get your fucking ice time. It's like, what are we doing? We don't have to handhold these guys. I think there's a benefit to kind of
it's a fine
teaching
line.
Guys a lesson a little bit.
It's a fine line, and it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach, and I think most of it is personality-driven. I honestly think it's what type of kid, and I think the really good coaches learn and understand that you're really like a personality, and like you're a personality manager, you're a game manager. You're not necessarily like, those are really important things. And what I'll say here is that very few guys are actually ever going to be like star offensive players in the NHL, even the ones that come out of juniors, right? So most of them fail because they don't learn how to round out their games. They're either unwilling to, they never get the chance to. There's a number of different reasons. Having said all that, and I'm learning this as I go as a coach, because we have some young players that we take on our team that were offensive their youth hockey careers, and then they come to the juniors and come to junior hockey, and like they end up on a fourth line. There's definitely a fine line of like taking a guy's creativity away, taking away a guy's confidence. There are a lot of guys that lose their confidence and they never get it back. So I do think that there's probably something to be said for that. And I'll just address, can you really over-ripen in the AHL in our chat? You can't over-ripen, but if you're in the American League, and I remember this with Chris Bourque. I remember this with a guy like him who just dominated at the American League level. He would play 2 minutes of every power play. He was just dynamic offensively. Then he'd go up to the big club and they'd put him on the third line, and it just was never a fit. So it's hard to really put your finger on it. And the last comment here, Jonny, because I know you want to chime in on this.
Mm-hmm.
Brad Marchand is always the name that I go back to, okay, because I watched it. I had a front row seat to watching Marshy be, a start in a bottom six role in the American League, okay, work his way up quickly in Providence, and then started with the Boston Bruins with Claude Julien as a fourth line player. The year of the Stanley Cup in 2011, Marshy was not a power play guy for that team, okay? But then halfway through the year, he got to the third line. Right, he wasn't on the fourth line for the playoff run. The Merlot line is a line that everybody knows about with Thornton and Paille and Campbell. Right, they wore the Merlot practice jerseys. But Marshy did it sort of the old school hard way, where he worked from fourth line to third line to second line to Hall of Famer. Nobody handed him the keys and said, "Here's 22 minutes in the power play." Nobody did that for Brad Marchand. So there's a case to be made on both sides of this argument. Jonny, what are you disagreeing with what I'm saying about Marchand?
You're talking about Brad Marchand, a third-round pick versus Easton Cowan, a first-round pick. Like, there is a difference in, like, where guys are picked. There is. Like, if you're picked in the first round, it's usually, like, the case is you're a more skilled guy who will probably get things handed to you more than a third-round pick would get those opportunities. Like, that's – I feel like that's a pretty, like, agreeable statement. Right,
yeah,
like third-round picks have a harder time earning
Cowan,
that opportunity.
Is Easton Cowan? If right now, if I said to you, do you think Easton Cowan's ever going to even be an all-star in the NHL? I mean, we're talking about a Hall of Famer. Marshy's going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but you can't write off Easton Cowan's career based off 40 games.
For sure, I'm not writing it off.
Yeah.
He looks like a nice player, but
what third round pick do you come in and see get those opportunities? That doesn't really happen ever. You don't see a third-round pick come in and get top six.
Brayden Point was pretty further down the draft, and
was he getting top 6 minutes right away in his career? Probably not.
I think he probably cut his teeth on the third line, but he was quickly into the top six.
But
you know what I mean?
What I was going to say, which leads into our next guest, and Zach, we do got to let you go here in a second because we got Chris Lopresti waiting. But it leads us perfect into Alexis Lafreniere. Alexis Lafreniere, first overall pick, was not given top 6 minutes right away, played third line, fourth line, had to quote unquote earn it, and has now not found that top 6 dominance at all. So it's kind of like, be careful what you wish for. If you want a guy to play third line and try to earn those minutes and, find that B game,
but he's not lacking.
He might never find the A game again, though.
Lafreniere, well, he's never really had. He had the smallest window of an A game in his whole career. He played 40 good games in the NHL in his whole career.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you wanted to spend
that might just be because
spend time in the third, fourth line.
100% it's because he killed him. Just like
the
Leafs back into
like
the
you said,
playoffs.
the Leafs. Oh, the Leafs can't do it. Oh, the Rangers will make it. The Leafs will miss.
Zach, thank you so much for coming on this morning. We appreciate you taking the time. We got Chris Lopresti waiting here.
I want you to look at Zach's Twitter handle or Twitter header. I want you to look at Nick Alberga's Twitter header, and I want you to look at Vic's Twitter header. Those are all the things I want you to look at some point here. Go ahead, Johnny.
All right, Zach, we love you. Any final thoughts here?
No, but I will say on Daily Faceoff on this channel later today, Michael Hage, Jeff Merrick interview coming. So make sure to check that out. Tomorrow we're going to launch Brendan Naurato. He just signed an extension with Michigan through 2030. That interview will come out. And then we've got 3 more after that that'll come out on the Daily Faceoff channel. Plus, I have like a little game day vlog experience of myself doing shit around the arena at Yost Ice Arena. So my first game there, it was an awesome experience, but make sure to subscribe here to the channel, like this stream, everybody who hasn't yet, and stick around later in the day because we will be having that first interview dropping.
No show today though, right? No live show, or you do have a live show?
No live show. No live show.
For the
that'll
shoot
come
today.
out in
just
place
interview,
of it.
Right? Yeah,
yep,
got it.
Correct.
All right. And I think we're gonna play a little snippet from that so people can see what that looks like. So we'll take a look at that here when we can. Have a good day, Zach. Thanks for getting up with us, man. I know it was a long night for you last night.
Appreciate you guys having me as always. This is fun, and look forward to coming back when the Leafs go on a skid again, and then you guys ask me to
exactly.
Down.
Love you, brother.
See you guys.
Be
Thank
good.
you.
Before we get to Chris Lopresti, just a quick word from our sponsor, JP Weisers. No matter where your team sits this season, watching the game with your crew makes everything better. The wins feel bigger and the rivalries hit harder. As the official whiskey of the NHL, JP Weisers is all about those moments that matter from October through June, the rituals, the midweek matchups, and the regional rivalries that bring friends together, because when you get the crew together for game night, that's a W. This season, fans can look forward to limited edition products and plenty more from JP Weisers. To stay up to date, visit jpweisers.com and subscribe to the JP Weisers newsletter for the latest on limited edition drops, products, and more. Must be legal drinking age. Enjoy responsibly. With that, first-time guest, very excited to have you from WFAN, Chris Lopresti. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us, Chris. I appreciate it.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. So it's good morning to Mr. Brightside. That's the new nickname. Very cool.
That's the new nickname.
And
Listen,
Colby, we've
Chris,
never met, but nice to meet you here.
I've been calling him Johnny Sunshine and Rainbows for about 3 years now.
I'll take Mr. Brightside any day of the week.
Nobody knows how to to try to polish a turd better than Johnny does. I mean, it could be 10-2, and he'll be like, Matt Rempe just stopped on his left skate. Did you see? That's why he's in the NHL. He can stop on both sides. I mean, Johnny he moves the bar so low for this team. Have you ever seen anything like it? I mean, it's unbelievable.
I'll admit I'm guilty of it sometimes, maybe not to that extent, but in a season and in a game that you just referenced, when you're losing 10-2 and you got to look for some sort of positive or bright side, there's not much else to point to other than Matt Rempe being able to stop on 2 skates. That's how bad it was against Boston. And obviously it's been pretty bad most of the season here for the Rangers.
Well, let me follow up on what we were just talking about with Zack Phillips, actually, because I saw a comment in the chat from Joe Albanese about Alexis Lafreniere and how previous coaches had ruined his confidence. And yes, that was a talking point, and that was probably accurate for the first 4 years of his career. But I don't think we're at a point where we can say that anymore. I mean, he's been given opportunity after opportunity under Laviolette and now under Mike Sullivan, and he hasn't delivered. I'm curious where you are right now on Lafreniere.
Yeah, it's kind of the same story we've seen over and over with a lot of the higher first round picks, more offensive minded guys that the Rangers have gotten their hands on. And look, you can't even go back and critique the selection because he was the unanimous selection
Yeah.
for number one that particular year. I mean, the COVID situation probably didn't help his case, but you could say that for any young player that was drafted that year or was coming into the league trying to make their way into the league at that time. So yeah, multiple coaches, different line mates. Colby just referenced it. Maybe played 40 really good games in his NHL career a couple of years back when he was playing on that line with Trocheck and Panarin when they had that magical connection and the Rangers made their run to the conference final. But it's just I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that Loff is what he is. I don't really see it changing a whole lot. I mean, I guess you could point to different style players, obviously, and taking it different points in round number one. But you look back to the early stages of Chris Kreider's career where he was a nice player, more of a role player, a middle sixer. And then obviously not until he got into his 30s did he really kind of find his niche and become a more consistent offensive player and a regular goal scorer. So two very different players, but guys that were taken in the first round, high expectations, who've been playing with the Rangers. For Kreider, I think he was 20 when he debuted in the playoffs. And obviously for Loff, coming in as a teenager, having never played in the AHL at any point. I don't think you can point now to coaching staffs, systems, opportunities. He's just an inconsistent player that has not found a regular game that you can depend on night in, night out. You see flashes of it. And he's another guy. He's not the only one on the Rangers that they don't seem to play with a lot of puck luck, pucks that bounce off his stick. He'll hit a bar here or there. Every now and then you get that glimpse that reminds you of why he was taken number one overall, but obviously not nearly enough on a consistent basis. Whereas a Ranger fan, you feel like this is what we expected from this guy.
Yeah, listen, you're talking about a guy who contributes, you're going to get 40, maybe 55 points out of him on a really good year. Like it's time to, I said this about, Capo Caco. It's time to stop looking at these players as number one overall, number two overall. There's a large enough body of work that we're never going to see, what people want. And the problem that I see here is that the Rangers, and he's one of them, they don't have good enough players. And that's just the reality. I don't care who the coach is, okay? You just don't. I mean, you've got a lot of guys that would make really good third-line players on playoff teams, right? But most of the guys in the bottom of your lineup are probably American League players. They are American League players, right? And most of the guys in the top of your lineup, they'd probably be really good third-line role players on a good team. Will Cooley is not a first-line player.
No.
And putting him in that role doesn't set him up well. JT Miller no longer looks like a top six forward. He looks like he'd be suited to go to a contender and be a third or fourth line guy for a really, really good team that needed a little bit of depth scoring and depth, sandpaper. And, I'd argue for Vinny Trocheck that he'd be a good second line center on most teams. I think right now the environment is probably weighing him down as far as his game goes. But even Gabe is a talented guy, but you can watch him. He still is having a difficult time with board battles. He's having a difficult time getting to the middle of the ice. He's an elite passer. I mean, the guy has vision for days, but it's the National Hockey League. Everybody has the hockey IQ. So I just continue to go back to the fact that I look at this team, Chris, and I'm like, it's a bad lineup. It's a bad mix of players. You're getting the results that you'd expect.
It is. And I had hoped that with some injuries aside, they would have been able to hang in there and maybe be more in contention for a wild card spot. And you say, well, what does that really do? Well, you get into the dance and you never know what can happen. But there's been, again, so many things that have gone off the rails this year, and certainly within the course of the last week or so, where you feel like, the sand is running out, the clock is ticking as we approach this Olympic break and trying to figure out what the heck they're going to do when push comes to shove. But I think all those things that you just mentioned are obviously exposed even more when you're playing without Adam Fox, and now you're playing without Igor Shesterkin. The defense, which early in the season looked like they had buttoned a lot of that stuff up in the early days of, the Mike Sullivan era and playing a new system in their own end, attention to detail, all those things. a lot of that has now seemingly gone out the door. And I'm not saying it's for a lack of effort, but they've definitely loosened up in their own end. I think some of that is probably just because they have to defend as much as they do. I mean, you saw it again last night. First period, they score a couple of goals, they put some shots on net, and then the rest of the way, it's like, where's the offense? Where's the puck possession? And they're just hemmed into their own end and struggling to generate offense on a consistent basis. And we've seen a lot of that for long stretches of periods within games where they'll give you a little burst and you're thinking, okay, here we go. And then all of a sudden you look up and, for a half the game, in last night's case, it was basically the final two periods where they're just not generating nearly anything offensively, and it makes it really difficult to score goals on a consistent basis and also to keep the puck out of your net, obviously.
I want to address a chat from Colonel Ludlow in our chat because I did
Colonel
fuck
Ludlow
up the pronunciation a couple weeks ago.
In Arizona.
Yeah. Colonel Ludlow is saying the obvious for Ranger fans. How many first round picks does this team need to ruin before you guys call out the issue? This issue has been called out for years. So
Yes.
amongst Ranger fans, I don't know if Colonel Ludlow is a Ranger fan or not, so I don't want to give you shit.
No,
but
he's a Wings guy. Really?
Oh, I didn't realize that.
He's
But
a Wings guy.
yeah, this has been an ongoing
he's right,
situation well, this has been like the most obvious issue with the Rangers for years is that the last homegrown good player the Rangers have really had is Chris Kreider. He's like the only one who's really, done much homegrown wise. Everyone else has been traded out of here. So this is a pretty obvious issue for the Rangers. And that's why I want to ask you, Chris, for the fans who are like, let's tear it down to the studs and try to rebuild it. I'm sick of, this core already. What the hell are you going to expect if they tear it down?
Who's the core? What core, Johnny?
It's Fox, Shesterkin, Trocheck now, Lafreniere.
Okay, so those three.
Zibanejad, Miller's the captain now. But again, look, I understand, and I mean, you guys have much more expertise when it comes to the game itself. I'm more on the fan side, and that's kind of the lens I look through it, and also people I talk.
That's why we want you here.
Right, of course. And I hear people say that all the time. And I'm more of a realist. I don't get too high or too low as far as, emotions go, watching these games and following year in and year out.
You're the opposite of Johnny.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy. First of all, it's easier said than done just from the standpoint of some of the contracts that they've obviously committed themselves to. No movement, no trade clause they've committed themselves to. And you get the fans that'll be like, well, you got to just make their life miserable until they want to waive it. And okay, well, then how exactly are you then looking to rebuild your team and your culture when everyone on the outside will know that you did that exact thing and used that course of action to want to get these guys out of town? And they've to some extent already explored that with what went on with Jacob Trouba and Chris Kreider. We don't need to go down that path. But yeah, you just referenced not just forget first round picks, just draft history, period.
Any of them.
Look, they've had some nice hits. Like I was looking at it this morning. I'm going to turn 40 in a couple of weeks. So I went back to my birth year of 1986, and I'm looking at the draft history year in and year out, and it is slim pickings. And a lot of the guys that actually went on to have really nice NHL careers did most of their production on other teams. So as far as Ranger production is concerned, it's a short list. You brought up Kreider. I already referenced the fact that it took him a while to really get to where he was an ultra productive player and a key part of what they were doing offensively. Obviously his ability on the power play, but I mean, it's him when I'm talking about true, top end offensive talent. Alexei Kovalev, who again played most of his career elsewhere. Yes, he was part of the cup winning team in 94 and a big part of it. And then I'm talking forwards, but you could throw Brian Leetch into the mix. Outside of that, it's a lot of guys that were nice middle six players, role players, 40 to 50 point per season guys. When you look right now, Panarin is the guy. He's the top end offense. It's always someone from outside the organization. It's the Marian Gabricks of the world, the Rick Nashes of the world, the Matt Zuccarellos of the world. Even they don't draft.
Let's give Derek Stepan some love, though. Give Derek Stepan some love.
But would you call him at any point in his career a true first line center? And that's not a slap in the face at him. I'm just talking about a guy that you really felt like, this guy.
He was like a 60-point guy.
Yeah. And that was pretty much where he capped out. He was consistent with it, and he debuted as a rookie and kind of, I think, caught us all by surprise at that point, at least as a second round pick, where they got a lot of production and value out of him early on. So I'm not trying to disrespect him, but when you look around the league at the the top upper echelon players, the guys that really move the needle, more often than not, when the Rangers are good and they're in their playoffs and they're making the run, that player on their roster has been acquired from the outside. And they either had to give up assets to acquire him, both in terms of roster players or draft picks, or they're committing significant dollars and term and clauses to get that guy in here. And that has been a problem that has hovered over this organization pretty much for my entire lifetime.
And if I may, Colby, just quick, like, I feel like a lot of people have talked about the Florida Panthers and how they brought in guys that didn't fit in elsewhere, like the Reinhardts and the Forslings and those kinds of guys, Bennett. But like Barkov and Ekblad were both their number one overall, or Barkov was a 2, I think, and Ekblad was a number 1 overall pick. Like, you know, those guys turned into pretty fucking good players. You know, so like you could say Florida traded everybody and signed free agents and what you want, but like when it came down to it, their like most important D-man and most important forward, best player on the team, captain, was the guy they drafted. Like, this is an ongoing theme with the Rangers, and again, like for the fans that are like tear it down to the studs, I don't know if that's going to make anything better. So that's why the Rangers feel stuck.
Stuck is the right word. I was just going to say they're in a really weird spot. I keep using the word purgatory because they don't have a lot coming. I mean, from as far as their prospects and their draft picks, I mean, maybe again, some nice players. I'm hopeful that Perreault will turn into something, but it's way too early to tell. I've been pushing to see more of him in the top 6. They gave him a chance last night, and that line obviously did not have themselves a good evening. He had a bad turnover in the neutral zone that led to a goal. I mean, that's fine. He's still got a lot of games to play before we can figure out what he's going to be. But even if they do move on from some of these guys that are getting a little long in the tooth or have the bigger contracts or have been part of this core, like, you can't, I don't see a scenario where they're going to get rid of everybody. I mean, Chris Drury just spent the better part of the last, let's call it year and a half or so, trying to get his hands on JT Miller. He's here now. They put the C on his jersey and he looks like a corpse of JT Miller, you know? And look, and I'm hopeful, and this is desperation. And this is where maybe some of the, I'm going to be Mr. Brightside now and look for the silver lining. I'm hoping that groin injury he suffered in training camp is something that's still lingering and has bothered him. And I know when he missed time, it was other injuries when he's missed some games this year, because if this version of JT Miller is what the Rangers are going to get moving forward, they're in a world of trouble because the contract is what it is. You're going to trade another guy that you just put the captaincy on. Like, you can see the frustration starting to boil over you. Obviously, Johnny, you were there last night in the locker room with his post game. So he's tried to say the right things up until now, but the more this goes on, it's starting to feel more and more like we're in danger of this whole thing going off the rails.
So I want to talk about what he said last night, but before we do, Ariel Cornfield in our chat, who we know is an Islanders fan, but she's talking about how, and she said, I'll read it to you all. I remember you guys saying what Drury did to Gaudreau, Trouba, and Kreider wasn't that big of a deal. And she says, I disagree. I think it destroyed the locker room. Well, what we talked about last year was that players are always going to want to play for the New York Rangers. And I don't think that that's changed, by the way. I think it's the New York Rangers. I think obviously in recent years, being in warm, non-taxable climates, state tax climates, has become sort of more important to players than we've ever seen before. And we've spent plenty of time on this show talking about that whole situation and how you are paying a lot of taxes because you're paying taxes in all the states that you play in. When you play in an NHL, you're playing and working in every state, basically. So, it has a big impact financially, for sure. I don't think, Ariel, what he did to Gaudreau and then pushing Trouba and Kreider out the door destroyed the locker room. I think all these other decisions is what I'm still looking at. Like, you committed a big contract to Lafreniere and you're getting zero return on it. You traded and brought in JT Miller and then you made him the captain and you're getting zero return on it. You have a team right now, like you brought in a Gavrikov, right? And to me, that was probably one of the better things that I've seen, but we haven't really had the great opportunity to watch him and Fox play together. Fox has been injured most of the season. We can all agree Adam Fox is the bright side, is the one bright spot of this team this year. It would be Adam Fox. I mean, he really would be. I mean, I think he's played well when he's been healthy, but again, you look at all these other moves, like And that's where you're sitting here and you're like, yeah, okay, like it's easy to say he ruined the locker room, but then like you went out and brought someone in who's been a captain, who's an alpha, who's had success in your organization before. You clamored over him. Like, I just look at these other things and think they've all been swings and misses. And I think like if Jacob Trouba were still on the New York Rangers, the whole fan base would just be blaming him for the losses every night because he was a whipping boy, right? So I think it's easy to say that, Ariel, but I'm not gonna say that I think that that ruined the locker room. I think players will always want to come and play in New York. There's an allure of New York. At least there has been. We'll see how New York looks in the next couple of years, but there's always been an allure to New York, and I think athletes will continue to want to play on the bright lights in Manhattan, no matter what or whom the GM is.
I think to some extent, maybe there was a little bit more truth to that last year. And again, Jonny could speak better to it, having spent more time around the team and in the locker room. But I thought that they went to pretty great lengths to try and address that, both with the Miller trade and then what they did in the offseason. And then, look, I know it was tough for Ranger fans to see them move on from Chris Kreider, but it did seem like to some extent that relationship was probably fractured beyond repair for maybe even a lot of reasons that the public is not privy to. I can't speak to that. To me, this year, this team, injuries don't help, but you guys referenced it earlier. All teams around the league, everyone's dealing with it. It happens. It's hockey. Guys are going to get hurt. They're going to miss time. I don't see a team out there, and Mike Sullivan has been very careful to mention this a lot, and he did again last night about it. Those guys in there care a lot, so I think he's trying to make it clear that this is not about like an attitude or an effort thing as far as guys checking out. Colby, you referenced it. The roster's just not good enough, and it's evident on the ice night in, night out, as they've got teams that are literally skating circles around them. They just don't have the horses, the speed, the top end talent to compete in this current landscape, because there's just too many teams that have too many good young players with a ton of talent, skill, speed. And the Rangers, as it stands right now, really just aren't built that way. So if things aren't going their way and they're not capitalizing on their high danger chances, or they're not buttoned up in the defensive zone, or Igor's not stealing a game, I feel like a lot of things have to be just right in order for them to have success in game. And then in terms of putting together a consistent period of good play. And the Winter Classic's a perfect example of bad sheet of ice. Fine. It's an outlier. They wipe the floor with the Panthers, and then they come right back. And here we are in this losing streak, and they have shown no signs of being the team that we saw on the ice that night. And I get it, sort of a glorified exhibition, but that's the issue. Is just they're them getting on any sort of consistent role or finding an identity in their game just doesn't seem possible right now as currently constructed.
The one thing I will say, just to go back to this like whole Gaudreau, Trouba, no move clause situation that Ariel brought up, because she also mentioned the Devils locker room seems broken right now too. This was not a conversation when the Devils were winning games before Jack Hughes got hurt. Like,
yeah,
that didn't break the Devils locker room when things were going well, right? Like now that things aren't going well in New York, yeah, you could say that's what broke the locker room. That's what happened last year, right? But if there's one guy that's going to debunk this whole thing, it's Mika Zibanejad. Mika Zibanejad has every reason in the world to be playing like shit right now. They traded away all his friends. They tried to get him to move or waive his no-move clause, and he's come out here and he's got 18 goals so far this season, and he's been very consistent since the start of the year. And that's the guy who you'd probably point to and be like, oh, well, Mika's going to be the one to quit this year because, his best friend's gone and they've treated all the guys like shit. Like, if anyone on this team had an excuse, it's him, and he hasn't shown it. So when it goes back to last year and making guys move and how the guys might be playing, I don't think Kaapo Kakko played great last night. I don't think Kaapo Kakko's lighting it up this year. I don't think Ryan Lindgren's having a great season. Jacob Trouba's had a pretty good year in Anaheim. Chris Kreider's had a pretty good year in Anaheim. They're losing games right now. Yeah, they've lost 9 games in a row or something like that, or 9 of their last 10. So when things are going good, yeah, they're going good. And the Ducks had a great start to the year, and those guys were playing well. Keandre Miller, has been fine in Carolina, hasn't been exceptional. And I don't know. I just think if we point to the Gaudreau, the Trouba, and how they were treated, yeah, it sucks. It's not the best way to do business. I don't necessarily agree with how it was handled, but that shouldn't just make the team suck for years after, I just don't think that's the case. But that's all I've really got. Any final thoughts, Chris? We really appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate you guys having me on. I've been a fan from a distance for a while. I follow you guys, and certainly Johnny's coverage of the Rangers pretty closely.
And the one day your cousin's
it's
not in our chat is the day you're on. I haven't seen Dylan's
yeah, he
name
must
pop
be
up
tied
once.
up with work or something like that. But no, he talks you guys up all the time, so I'm sure
Yeah,
he'll
he's the
catch it
best.
later on, maybe after he's done with his work day or something. Look, it feels like we're maybe going to enter into a dark period, kind of like where the Rangers were at in the late 90s, early 2000s. I hope that's not the case. I know it's a different world we live in now, post lockout and the cap and the rising cap and everything, but until they can get their hands on some homegrown players that they really do a nice job with, who can come to the NHL level and really have the type of impact that we're seeing from other guys across the league. And look, maybe bottoming out this year will help them. The fact that they held on to their first rounder this year and, gave up last year's first rounder in the Miller trade, maybe somehow they back themselves into it. But the reality is they do have an aging core, guys that are locked into contracts who have a lot of control as far as whether they're going to stay or go. We didn't even talk about the Panarin situation with the trade deadline pending. So it's a team that could look very different in short order. But if they kind of hold on and just try to add to it, I don't really see where the upside lies. I think Chris he's got to be honest with himself at some point.
He's got one or two bullets left in the chamber, and he's not going to go down without firing them. That's reality of the situation. So, Chris, thanks for coming on today, man.
Yeah,
always
thank you, Chris.
Talk about the Rangers. Our chat,
thanks, guys.
Has a lot to say about them. We got a couple of other things we want to hit on here. So good catching you, and I'm sure some of our chat listeners and our viewers will be catching you on WFAN at some point here. So thanks for coming on, man.
Sounds good, guys. Appreciate
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So make sure you hit the like button if you're still here with us. Let's pump up those likes for those of you that are still here. Couple of other things, Johnny, that I did want to talk about. Meanwhile, some guy in our chat is complaining that I like to hear myself talk.
He's right. You do.
Very observant. Thanks
Must
for
be new
coming
here.
to my show to listen to me talk. I mean, literally, like, you're very observant. Thank you for that.
Can I say one thing, though?
High-end, sharp analysis. And then there's somebody else who, and now I think I lost it, Johnny, that's saying, I'm going to try to pull it up. Didn't like my response to, here you go, from Scott W8224. He said, what is Colby talking about? She said he ruined the locker room, basically talking about the players there, not the new players coming in. Well, the new players that came into the team, one of them is the captain. So if you're going to sit there and talk about a locker room, I don't think you can ignore the guy who wears the C. And if you you move players out, you bring players in, and you still have an issue, I don't know how you're not roping those guys in. You're not talking about the players that are currently in there. So I don't really understand. Maybe you just didn't listen to me. Maybe, it's early in the morning and you haven't drank your coffee yet. And I guess I would ask you, Ariel, do you feel like I tap danced around your question? I don't know. Like, I thought I answered it pretty directly. So go ahead, Johnny. I know you wanted to say something.
Well, I was just going to talk about the Canes too, because Josh Miller, who wrote in the chat that I said Miller's been okay, he disagrees. I think he's been good with flashes of great and terrible on occasion. Wouldn't that be okay? Like, if you've been great and then terrible on occasion, like, wouldn't that be okay? Like, I feel like that's kind of the definition of okay. Like, Keandre has been fine. Like, I think he's had a fine year with Carolina. I expected better, so that's why I'm saying he's been okay.
I just think Keandre Miller is just a good NHL player. Like, I don't think expecting Keandre to be a star or to be great is realistic. I think he's just supposed to be a piece to the puzzle. I think he's supposed to be a guy who fits into your six. And you're right, some nights maybe a little better than others, but I don't think you're asking Keandre Miller to be a star. And I don't think that's even realistic. And I'm not saying you're doing that.
Yeah, I didn't say he was going to be a star.
No. I'm just saying in general, like, I think you have to, again, Keandre Miller's not Keandre, the high first-round pick anymore. He's Keandre, the guy we've watched play in the NHL for years and years at this point, right? And so I just think if you can get him to be a guy who gives you 17, 18 good minutes a night, solid minutes a night, he moves the puck. Maybe some nights he's involved a little bit offensively. He defends hard. Like, he's a piece to the puzzle. He doesn't make $12 million. You're not asking him to do anything crazy. So I think, the idea that he's anything more than on a really good day, a 3, and on most nights, he's probably a 4. And then you're going to have your off nights where he's a 5. Like, you're still talking about a good quality NHL defenseman.
I just thought it was funny, the wording, like how I said, I think K'Andre has been okay. And then like Josh's explanation of he's been great and then terrible on occasion. Like, good players aren't really terrible on occasion. Good players are consistent and they're good night in, night out. Like that, I just expected K'Andre to be more consistent with Carolina. Like that's basically all I was getting at. I think it was a better system that he'd fit in. I think, having his big, long reach with Carolina would make him a little bit more dominant defensively. And I don't think in the games that I watched, and again, Josh, Ian, all of our Carolina fans, I don't watch every Carolina game. So I definitely can't speak to it from the 40 plus game perspective, but in the games that I have seen K'Andre play, like he's been fine. He hasn't necessarily been like the K'Andre that I'm hoping for him to be. I said in the summer, I think K'Andre Miller is going to be a more important player to Carolina than Noah Dobson will be for Montreal, and I don't know right now if that's the case. Noah Dobson's probably been better for Montreal than K'Andre has been for Carolina, and I can admit that.
Yeah, but I don't think those two players are in the same.
It's importance to their team.
Caliber.
I think Dobson's impact. I thought Miller's impact for Carolina would be bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I think Noah Dobson hovers around being a true number 1 defenseman, and
but he's not there. That's why I was saying.
Yeah, that's why I said hovers. I'm not saying he is night in and night out. I think he hovers around it. And I think,
people are I'm not saying like people are misunderstanding my words. I'm saying importance to their team. Like, who's an example I can give? I'm trying to think here. Like, this is a tough one.
I'm not going to help.
Yeah, you talk. Let me see if I can.
A little bit.
Let me see if I can bail myself out.
I also think a big thing with Carolina.
But do you get what I'm saying? I think
a big thing with Carolina that I think they're built. They put a systems and a structure in place that they're built for consistency. It's why I think everybody in the regular season just kind of rolls their eyes. I've even seen it in the chat today from our Carolina folks. Like, they're like, hey, you know what? Whatever. Like, we don't even care about the regular season, right? So, Scott, we love you, and I appreciate the chirps. Honestly, no, I have no issue with you taking shots at me, but keep them coming. Seriously, it's all
it's all conversational.
Right? He says we were talking about the Rangers, and he's had 3 cups of coffee. He's delivering mail in 35-degree weather. Hey, you're a legend for being out there in the weather, man. Yeah. I no issues there, but. Carolina's built for consistency, and I think the players that survive in Carolina long-term are guys that they have their A game, they have their B game. At worst, it's a C+ game. At worst, it's a C+ game, right, in Carolina. It's one of the reasons why, Kakaniemi is getting sort of phased out of Carolina because he doesn't know how to have a B game. He seems like there's such a big delta between the two in the way that they play, Jonny. And while we're just on this topic, and I did actually catch a good portion of the Detroit Carolina game last night. Patrick Kane is on the second power play in Detroit. I mean, people were ready to take a knife to our throat when we said Kaner probably shouldn't make the Olympic team this year. And seeing him play on the second power play last night, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, whoa, like, I know he's had some injuries this year. I think he has 7 goals or something like that. But it was weird to me to see the first power play go for 130 and then Kaner jump out for like the last 30 seconds of the power play with all the younger guys, right? And, I think, and we have the comment, Kaner's off the first power play because JVR is on fire. And like, that's the thing. Like, I think JVR is just a much better net front guy than any of your other options that you have. I mean, he really is. He scored another goal last night. He probably should have had another assist. But you know, M Johnson LGRW says it has nothing to do with his play. Well, listen, all I would say back to that is, like, I agree. You're talking about other guys maybe that are playing better, or it's not a positional fit, but okay, but and Whiskey and Wings in the chat says Kane's been on the second unit for a week. It's not been a good look. What I would say to all of that is, if Kaner were tearing it up and dominating, he would be forcing him onto the first power play, right? But DeBrincat has been a little bit more of a lethal scorer. Raymond is a guy who's not coming off the first power play. You know, Sider's the net front guy. Larkin seems to be really good in that bumper spot. So to say it has nothing to do with his play, M. Johnson, like, I get your point on that, but if he was playing unbelievably, then they would move Redmond, you know, they would move someone else off the first power play, right? I mean, that's got to be a reasonable comment for you guys that are Wings people, because I know you guys, Wings fans, defend their players about as hard as any fan base. I have learned that this year, because we have talked a lot more about the Wings this season than in previous seasons. They defend their players hard. Even if they're shitting on a guy, the minute someone from outside the family does it, they lose their shit. And M. Johnson is also saying, he's not saying it's a punishment. Yeah, I don't think anybody's saying you're punishing him. That's definitely not what I was saying, just to be clear, Johnny.
Well, I was just going to say, too, like with General Soreness' comment, heard a reporter mention that a current Red Wing player did not know Konstantinov's story. How is that even possible? Are current players that disconnected from the game's history? Like, we're probably talking about, you know, a 20-year-old kid who probably didn't grow up a Red Wings fan. Like, you're not just going to know every franchise's history. Like, I couldn't tell you much about the San Jose Sharks history, like in the 90s or the early 2000s. Like, I wasn't watching San Jose Sharks games. I don't know who their best player was in the early 2000s before the Joe Thornton trade. You know, I think that's just like a thing that you, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't expect players to know team history, depending on who the player was. Maybe it's a foreign player too, who didn't grow up like watching, you know, the early 2000s Red Wings or late 90s Red Wings. Like, yeah, Walter Barker just said currently players were born in 2008. You know, like, it's crazy. Sorry, got a little side tangent there.
No, that's all right. So, I do think the last thing, Johnny, we should touch on is the Dean Evason situation, and there's been more information.
We didn't even talk about Tampa winning 10 in a row, too.
It's more information that has come out. We'll talk Tampa tomorrow. More information has come out this morning about Rick Bowness and, you know, the arrangement with Rick Bowness. So, and then there's a little Vic. We were talking in our chat, and Vic kind of had a little bit of a different point of view on it. First off, listen, Rick Bowness has come on our show a couple of times. We love Rick Bowness. Look, I mean, we'll ask JVR about this. You know, if we can get him to come on this week, hopefully he will. He had a really good experience playing for Dean Evason, like, said really good things about him. Even at the end,
Russo loves him too.
Even at the end, when he kind of got pushed out, you know, of his spot because they were going with some younger guys late in the season. And I think Reimer was frustrated about that, but he still said really good things about it. I'm also really happy Mike Havland is still coaching there. Like, I have a very close personal connection to Mike Havland, and so happy that he was left alone on the staff. But I guess this is a situation, Johnny, where I don't think anybody was expecting this, but it feels like the team probably overachieved last year. And so it was easy for Waddell to kind of want to, like, reset things and try to make a little bit of a move this year. And Elliot Friedman reported in the last little bit that, you know, Rick Bowness's contract is literally just for the end, through the end of this season. And Vic was like, I'm surprised that he went for that. I'm actually not surprised that he went for that. That actually seems like a perfect scenario for him, because he's retired from coaching. He's been doing some media stuff. He's hinted to us that he would still coach and he could still coach. So it's a perfect opportunity for him to just sort of come in, see what he can do, see if he can still connect with the young players. I think he can. we've had him on this show. He seems like he's very in tune with everything going on. And so I actually look at this as probably a really smart move by Don Waddell, rather than rushing into giving someone a 5-year contract, see who's available in the offseason, to who you want to really be your next coach. And it doesn't start the clock for Don Waddell on his coaching hires. You know how we always say you get
it delays him time. Yeah, it delays him time.
It buys him time to make the decision while maybe jolting his team to get on a little bit of a streak. So it all makes perfect sense to me, Johnny. I don't know where you sit with
it. He's also only been out of coaching for 1 year. It's not like he's been retired for multiple years. It's not like he's so far removed from the game. And again, we have seen him on TNT. He's been great on TV. I'm going to miss seeing him on TNT. I think he's been one of the better personalities for NHL on TNT when he is on the panel. But again, this is I
agree. I love when Bowness is on there. When he's
been great on our show.
When that guy's talking on the panel, I'm dialed. I want to know what he has to say. And it was the same way when they had Rick Tocchet, even when they had Craig Berube. I want to hear what those guys have to say, really more than anybody that you listen to. I mean, I love getting inside those guys' brains.
And this is the lowest risk, high reward move I think you could possibly make. They're already, in last place in the Eastern Conference, toward the bottom of the league. Don't think people are really expecting them to climb out of it. I'm not necessarily expecting them to climb out of it. I expect them to be better at this point. Again, they're like Vic has on the screen. They're only 7 points back. It's not like it's that deep of a hole, but the hole gets deeper much quicker than I think everyone expects, right? 7 points turns into 12 points quickly, listen, I like Rick Bowness, so I like the move for Columbus. I think a lot of people within the Columbus organization, I was talking to a friend who works in the organization yesterday. He was just very surprised by the move. I don't think people really saw it coming. And when I saw the news yesterday, I was like, whoa, that came out of nowhere. But like Josh Miller's actually saying, I know I was kind of going at Josh before, but I feel for Columbus fans. Josh just wrote, I feel for Columbus fans. Their team always feels irrelevant. No one ever talks about them, even though they're in the Canes division. I truly hope they can put something together. Remember we talked about that Bill Simmons comment, who's the most irrelevant franchise in sports? He said the Columbus Blue Jackets, and he had pretty good points backing that up. And this seems to be another year just of disappointment for the Columbus Blue Jackets fan base, when we've seen in years past, if they're good, they show up.
Yeah. Listen.
You tuned me out, didn't you? You tuned me out there.
No. It's been well.
It's 10:18. You're done with me.
It's been well documented on this show how we feel about the Columbus Blue Jackets fan base. It's been well documented on this show, and I don't think we have to. We've always had nothing but good things to say about the fan base. So we'll see if they get the new coach bump. We see teams, Johnny, they win 4 or 5 games in a row. They get a new coach. Maybe they lose 1 or 2, and then all of a sudden they get on a little hot streak. And I think that's probably what Don Waddell is thinking about. So the last little thing I just wanted to bring up, I don't know if you saw any of the BU Harvard game last night. We had a couple of
Brayden Point.
No, we had a couple of people in our chat that were asking me about it. And they were wondering about Tynan Lawrence. Look, I didn't. You had to look for him last night, Tynan Lawrence. You did. He definitely didn't jump off the page. So, TBD on that one. TBD on that one. And I watched, BU won the game 4-1. I think Neil asked me, do I think BU is back? I don't think that at all. I just think, again, they played against Harvard, who has not been playing very well. They've been on a slide. Harvard, they lost to Princeton, they lost to Dartmouth. Not a real confident team. They can't score. Harvard, they can't seem to score. They get the first goal of the game, a goal that Yegorov lets in. I didn't like the first goal. It was a bad turnover at the offensive blue line. 2 seconds later is in the back of BU's net, but I still didn't like it. I will say this as the last thing I will say, because now I'm seeing Eiserman's name pop up in the chat. I think there's a chance Yzerman doesn't sign after this year. I'm not saying it's a done deal.
I thought you expected that.
I don't think it's like a foregone conclusion that he signs and turns pro. I'm not saying it won't happen. Like I would probably, I think I'd say 50-50. And I just don't think that he's ready for the National Hockey League. And I just think, continuing to develop under Jay Pandolfo and work on his game next year, he'll have more of a runway with Tynan Lawrence at center. Some of the other players on that team will just be a little bit further along, but I just don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he signs after this season. If he really wants to and pushes for it, the NHL team's not going to say no.
Yeah.
But I just, listen, it hasn't been a great year, right? Like you want to sign your pro contract after having
and feel good.
After having a really good year. And I just don't think it's been that for anybody at BU. Maybe you could point and say Cole Hudson does Cole Hudson things. And, even last night he gets them going with the first goal. He's like such a difference maker. But that's the last thing I want to say about that game. And, we'll get back to Cuppa College. I don't know if we're going to get back to it this week, Johnny, just because there's been so much going on, but we will get back to Cuppa College. If not this week, we'll do it next week. And I am supposed to do Providence, BC Friday night at BC.
Oh, really?
So,
nice.
I've already started kind of looking into that, looking forward to seeing that young Finnish player that just signed, that just is going to start playing for BC in his first game.
Mm-hmm.
I think BC is about to get a little bit healthier. They're about to get one of their draft picks back in the lineup, a forward who is an important guy for them. And so I think that's going to help. They moved Hagen's brother Michael up to forward.
He's been playing forward most of the year.
Yeah, for like 2 months now, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to seeing how that's working out. I also really love Sean Skahan, the defenseman, and I know that his father is Sean. His dad's a strength coach in the National Hockey
League. He's a
League,
freshman, right?
He was last year, and he didn't play a lot. And
yeah.
I don't know how his minutes have been a little bit lower, but I really like the kid. I think there's something there. I think he's like a Utah 2nd or 3rd round pick. So I am looking forward to seeing how some of these guys look. And then Big Dean Letourneau, like I can't wait to watch him this week because he's just been so good. And you look at his size. I mean, this guy's going to have to prove that he sucks to not be an NHLer because that's how big he is and that's how many tools he has. So I am looking forward to doing that on Friday, and that'll be a fun game to see. And Roger McQueen, another guy, like I've only seen Roger McQueen on tape, right? I've only seen his film. I haven't seen him live.
He was pretty damn good in the game I did Providence at UMass earlier this year. He had a big third period to help Providence win that game. So he's looked good. I honestly haven't watched a college game in a couple weeks. I did Princeton a few weeks ago. I've been watching a lot of Princeton because I've been doing a lot of their games. They're fun. But I haven't really, I got to be better with my Hockey East intake. I haven't really been watching over the past few weeks. I've just been so busy. There's so many NHL games to watch.
No, listen, I've been
traveling.
I've been doing it too. I haven't seen a lot of college as much games as I would like, but now I'll have to start getting dialed in because we're not that far from the NCAA tournament.
No,
right? We're not that far. So anything else you want to get into today, Johnny, or you think we've kind of hit it all?
I mean, we didn't talk Brayden Point and that whole thing last night. Tampa's 110 in a row. I know you said we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Let's see what information comes out today about his injury.
Yeah.
And then I think tomorrow, if we find out it's a real injury, then we got to talk about who's going to replace him on Team Canada. And I see your comment, Neil, about Sondriel. Like, agreed. He's moved up the lineup in a big way for that team. But I'll talk about that on Friday. So make sure you tune into the game on ESPN. Because I'll definitely talk about that on Friday, the way he's moved up BC's lineup. So, and I'll get all Rangers fans a little update on Drew Fortescue, who I think the world of. Like, I really love the way that kid plays. And if we have any Dallas Stars people here, Aaron Manetian, who's that kid's a stud. Like, he's a literal stud. He's a mid-round draft pick stud. So, great. Neil will be there. Neil, come say hello for sure for the game. I'll be we'll be there. So we'll find out about Brayden Point, and we'll let you know. Reamer just texted me and he said he thinks he can do Wednesday. He'll be in the car just landing back in Minnesota, but he can call in. We could probably do it from his phone. We'll figure that out if we can make that happen, or we'll push him off to next week. So with that, Jonny, no the sheet today, but they will be putting the interviews that Jeff Marek did at the University of Michigan with some of those, the Canadian World Junior guys and some of the other players that I think are players they wanted to talk to. I think they talked to Will Horkoff as well. They talked to Brandon Navarro. So
Malcolm Spence, Michael Hage.
That'll come out at 1 today. Actually, Vic has a little clip of that, and we're going to show you guys all that right now real quick before we say goodbye.
This team's a wagon. You know that. What is the best thing about this team? Like, what makes this team work? Top team in the country. What makes this thing go?
I honestly think just how tight we are off the ice and how many good guys we have. I don't think there's anyone in this room that has a single bad thing to say about anyone in the locker room. So I think it starts off the ice, just how tight of a group we are. And just how bad every one of us wants to do it for each other. And that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen on good teams that I've been on in the past is, the closer you are off the ice, the better you're going to be. And at the same time, obviously there's a lot of talent in this room. But yeah, it's been pretty special. I think a mix of how good the older guys have been, just acclimating everyone. And I mean, our freshmen have been unbelievable. Some of our best players. So, yeah, good mix. It's been awesome.
That's Michael Hage. We'll catch that later today. Looked like they got some great stuff at the University of Michigan.
He was Montreal?
Montreal, first round pick. Yeah.
He's going to be a good player for them.
21st overall, I think.
He looks like one of those guys that you're going to look at in a couple of years and be like, how the fuck did he when they do redrafts, people are going to say he should have been a very high pick.
Out of the USHL, Chicago Steel. He played on the team with Macklin.
Yeah, there was a lot of good players on that team, wasn't there? So might see some USHL news here in the coming days as well. I think there could be a big name on the move that's gonna leave college and go back to the USHL here in the next couple of days. So we'll keep an eye on that. We are having Glenn on, I think, Thursday. We're having Glenn on to discuss an article that came out about a merger. I reached out to Glenn and said, hey, I read this article. Would you mind commenting on it? And he said he'd be happy to come on and comment on it. So, more articles about mergers and this and that. So we'll just ask him right to his face live in front of the audience. I think that's always the best way to do it. So with that, make sure you tune into the sheet today. You're not going to get a live show, but you're going to want to see it. Daily Faceoff at noon. As always, Daily Faceoff live. Subscribe to the Daily Faceoff. Leave us comments on our stream. I saw there was a lot of comments yesterday. People really weighed in throughout the show, which we appreciate. Go to the automatic downloads. Continue to hammer the audio only. That's huge for us. Give us reviews, obviously 4 stars. Leave us your comments on that, which we appreciate. That's always really important. And then before we officially say goodbye today, Jonny is going to hopefully give you a Bet365 winner. And then I'm going to let Jonny be the last voice to talk to you today.
Don't worry, Ian. We have the bet coming. Bet365, whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. So download the app, and get in on the game. You must be 19 or older. Tonight, after the Toronto Maple Leafs emotional win last night in Colorado, I'm hoping that they give a stinker tonight in Utah. The Utah Mammoth have been playing some really good hockey as of late. They got the Leafs on a back-to-back. I think the Leafs have a stinker after that big win last night. So we'll take Utah on the money line at -150 tonight to put some humble pie back in Toronto Maple Leafs fans. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. We do have a couple of guests that we're working on for tomorrow. As always, we love you. Sorry to listen to Colby talk all morning, and we'll talk to you tomorrow morning. What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to Morning Cuppa Hockey here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. And don't forget, we've got more great hockey content every day. You can catch DFO live at noon and stick around for the Sheet with Jeff Marek at 1 p.m. right here on Daily Faceoff. Until then, keep your coffee hot and your takes hotter.